How do I make $2.6 million disappear? Ask the creators of PuffPals Island Skies, if you can find them. This is a wild story of a Kickstarter scam that shocked me and thousands of backers. But it's not the only one. Stick around to uncover what went wrong and learn how to spot shady developers before they take your money. Sometime in April 2022, Fluff Nest, a company specializing in the production of plush toys, announced its ambitious project, the game PuffPals Island Skies. They decided to take a swing in the gaming market and break into it with both feet. I imagine Animal Crossing, but with adorable plush creatures, farming, and island exploration. What an interesting combination, you might think. What a clear hit with the audience for their product. The embodiment of all the dreams of players who love cozy games. That's how they hooked people. On April 6, they announced their desire to create the game. And on the April 7, they launched a Kickstarter campaign with a goal of raising just $75,000. For that money, they promised cute characters, bright graphics, and the chance to create your own paradise on a tropical island. How adorable! And what happened next? In less than 24 hours, the project was fully funded. But that was just the beginning. Money continued to pour in every day. The first stretch goals, adding fishing and smart fruits and vegetables, were achieved almost instantly. By the end of the campaign, the figures were staggering. $2.6 million from more than 43,000 sponsors. That was 34 times more than the initial goal. A real success. It would seem that after such powerful support, the game should be 4 times bigger and more ambitious than the developers had planned. However, the exploitation of future fans unfolded as follows. After the basic contribution, sponsors were offered various extras, exclusive items, plush toys, the opportunity to create an NPC. The most expensive package cost $5,000 and allowed you to create your own character for the game. By the way, 5 people chose this option. In short, they squeezed as much money out of them as they could, and if they had the opportunity, I think they would have cleaned them out completely. But I'm just getting started, it gets even more interesting. So, in addition to simply offering toys on Kickstarter, they also made a limited offer. Support us now and get one of the 500 toys we have. Well, you know what I mean. As I understand it, they also styled them to look like NPCs from the future game and played on the buyer's emotions as much as possible. After a successful campaign, the wait began. Fluffnest regularly published updates, concept art, development screenshots, promises of an early alpha release. Everything except gameplay. You can't live on pictures and screenshots alone. But the sponsors were patient. They understood that creating a game takes time. The year 2023 passed with promises and postponements. The year 2024 brought new apologies and new promises. Alpha testing was constantly delayed, and the release dates became increasingly vague. In December 2024, an update appeared in which Fluffnest mentioned important internal changes and promised to keep to the original schedule for several months. This was the last official update. Meanwhile, sponsors were increasingly expressing concern in the comments. Some began to ask for refunds, but received evasive answers about company policy. Something's brewing. Can you feel it? And now we come to the climax of our story. September 2025, when sponsors visit the official PuffPals website, instead of the familiar page, they see the words "domain for sale." The site where merchandise and toys were sold has simply disappeared. No one could have expected such a powerful slap in the face from them, and I can't even imagine the faces of those who really waited for this project with all their hearts. I feel sorry for these people, and their reaction will be understandable. The company's social media accounts have gone silent. Requests for refunds have gone unanswered. The creators of the project, Lily and David, have simply vanished into cyberspace, taking with them the dreams of tens of thousands of people and their money. According to the latest information, CEO David fired the entire development team and stopped responding to requests from sponsors for refunds. The community's reaction was immediate and fierce. Thousands of sponsors demanded refunds through the Kickstarter. A wave of indignation began on social media, and some of those particularly affected began legal proceedings. Bloggers and journalists began their own investigations. For example, YouTuber Mujan published a detailed analysis showing how a manipulative add-on system allowed Fluff Nest to raise significantly more money than originally planned. His investigation inspired me to create a video about the problem of all shady projects on the site that try to squeeze money out of you. But more on that later. Now I will continue with what ultimately happened to the project. PC Gamer, Kotaku and other gaming publications picked up the story. New details emerged. The company lost the rights to the PuffPals trademark. There were problems with third-party developers, and the company's financial situation was extremely unstable. The company's personal response: we miscalculated the budget and spent too much money at once, leaving us with no budget for further development of the project. It even sounds ridiculous. They couldn't come up with a better excuse and publicly stated this. According to the latest information, several lawsuits have been filed against Fluff Nest, but the prospect for returning money to sponsors remain unclear. It is known that they have already lost several cases and will have to pay more than $1 million, but it is not yet known whether this will be contested and whether the amount will be reduced. Overall, I think it's a clear-cut case of how conscientious buyers can be deceived. Let's recall a few more similar cases from Kickstarter, where developers never released their games. Now I will reveal to you all the gems, I would say, of gaming scams. The most famous story that turned crowdfunding into a personal bank account that replenishes itself over the years. In October 2012, Chris Roberts announced Star Citizen. I think you already understand, but let's take a look at how it happened. The promises were grandiose. A massive universe with fully explorable star systems and planets, even line-scale battles between ships, first-person mode, a campaign in the spirit of Roberts' early works. The project raised $2.1 million on Kickstarter, but that was just the beginning. After the campaign, fundraising continued on the project's own website, or rather into their personal pockets, whichever way you want to put it. The game was supposed to be released in 2014, but now it's not 2015 or 2016, but 2025. More than 10 years have passed, 13 years if I counted correctly, which is just unimaginable how long. By 2025 the game is still in an incomplete but playable alpha state, having raised over $800 million from gamers through years of continuous crowdfunding and in-game ship sales. Yes, they have actually raised $800 million during all this time. In August 2025, Roberts stated in an interview that Star Citizen is targeting a release in 2027 or 2028, and its single-player spin-off, Squadron 42, is scheduled for release in 2026. What a storyteller he is, I can't believe it. There is no news today about Squadron 42, which is supposed to be released in 2026. I have no idea how they come up with these dates, but someone actually believes them and is waiting. And it's not just that someone believes and waits, but someone is actually donates. Exclusive ships were sold for thousands of dollars, and the most expensive ship cost $15,000. Also, now the most expensive ship on the market cost only about $600. Okay, we've had our laugh, now let's move on the next project called Yogventures. The popular Minecraft YouTube channel Yogcast came up with the idea of creating its own game, similar to Spirit to Mahjong's creation with voxels and survival. Yogcast had millions of subscribers and used all its popularity to promote the project. 30,600 fans paid over $550,000, believing they would receive the game by December 2012. After raising money on Kickstarter and hiring a group of promising indie developers, the game began its journey, but then ran into management problems. Even with these problems, everything seemed feasible until the lead artist, who was supposed to do all the drawing, left the project. They had already paid him $35,000, a significant portion of the budget, without signing any contract, leaving the creators with no leverage. Deadlines came and went. What the developers showed looked poor even by alpha version standards. 2013, 2014. By July 2014 it became clear that there would be no game. Yogventures was officially cancelled. The studio fell apart and the relationship between Yogcast and the developers was completely ruined. As compensation, all investors were given a key to the beta version of the game TUG from another studio, which also ended up being abandoned and unfinished, leaving everyone who had invested in Yogventures high and dry. But don't think that's all. I've prepared another project that made me smile when I was looking for similar examples of games. The most absurd example I could dig up, as the project itself was small and not widely known, but I just have to mention it. In May 2014, developer Eric Tereshinsky launched the Ant Simulator campaign, a simple ant simulator created in 48 hours as part of a game jam. The idea was simple. Control a colony of ants, build anthills, and collect food. Nothing revolutionary, but cute. The campaign raised a modest $4,500 from 87 backers. It would seem that what would go wrong with such a small amount? But Eric had two business partners, Tyler Mounts and Devon Staley. And this is where it gets interesting. January 2016, 2 years after the announcement of the creation of a full-fledged game, Eric decides to speak out about the situation with the game and says the following. I recently found out that my former business partners were secretly stealing money from the company. They secretly spent the vast majority of our Kickstarter money and investments in Ant Simulator on alcohol, restaurants, bars, and even strippers. Eric announced that he was leaving the project and ETSK LLC, which is named after him, and that Ant Simulator was being cancelled. They claimed that they had invested $5,000 of their own money in the company, more than Tereshinsky, and completely denied all accusations. But the damage was done. The internet exploded with the memes about ants and strippers, and Kickstarter deleted the project page. And after all these stories, the main question remains: how can you protect yourself? First of all, crowdfunding is not a store where you buy a finished product. It is an investment in someone's dream. And like any investment, it can either bring a profit or burn to the ground. The first rule of Kickstarter: learn to see the red flags. They are always there, but not everyone pays attention to them. PuffPals was made by a toy store, and Simulator was created by people with no track record. Yogventures YouTubers with no development experience. Check their profiles and look at their previous projects. If a person has no experience in what they promise to create, it's a risk. Pay attention to their development reports. Demand live demonstrations without editing. If a developer can't show how their product works in real time, that's immediately a question mark. Secondly, pay attention to promises. Are they saying they will make a complex game in 6 months? AAA projects take years to create, even with experienced teams. If an indie team promises to make a GTA killer in 6 months, that's not ambition, it's a deception. Examples of this include Yogventures and PuffPals, which promised to be the best games in their niche. Thirdly, aggressive pressure on you. Only today, last chance, only 10 slots left. Classic scammer tricks. Honest developers don't use this kind of pressure, where you have to hurry up and buy yourself a new ship in Star Citizen or a unique plush toy in PuffPals. Of course, you can name a bunch of projects that started on Kickstarter and were successful, and everything worked out well for the developers. But being picky and questioning inconsistencies is an absolute must before financially supporting a project. Good creators regularly show their work process, share problems and solutions. They don't hide difficulties, they explain how they overcome them. Instead of a revolutionary game that will change the industry, they say a good RPG in the style of a classic games. This means they have a realistic assessment of their strengths. For example, a developer answers questions, acknowledges criticism and adjusts plans based on feedback. This shows that they really care about the result. If you can download and try at least the basic functionality, that's a big plus. And most importantly, don't forget about the project after you have paid. No updates for months is the red flag. Crowdfunding is not a store, it's a casino. Only play with money you can afford to lose. Double check everything and always trust your intuition. Dream, but dream wisely. Support creativity, but protect your wallet. Even the most beautiful dream is not worth your last penny. I hope you found my thoughts on this topic interesting and that you learned something new from this video. Thank you for watching, and I wish you only success and successful projects.